Hi everyone, welcome back to another edition of Movies That Move We. Today we are discussing the 688. This was directed and co-written by Tyler Perry. And it's about what was it called? The Women's Army Corps during World War II. It's called 688 because that was the name of the Black Women's Army Corps. And they were given an impossible task. Mail, sounds simple. You sort it and put it in the right boxes and send it on its way. But no, there were about, 12, 14, 16, 1,000, it doesn't matter. I think it was something like over 170,000 pieces of mail that were being held up. Families weren't getting the letters that the soldiers were sending home. The soldiers weren't getting the letters and packages that their families sent to them, and morale was low. Now, again, this is during around 1943 when this took place. This is based on a true story. It's not fictionalized. It's about real people. We're talking about a period of segregation where even in the military, black men and white men were not necessarily fighting side by side. Mm-hmm. There was a whole separate division. All of you black folks stay here, and all the white folks can go out there and get the glory. Okay, so that's kind of the setting that we're dealing with. Thoughts, comments?
Yeah, like in the beginning of the film, you notice when they are first entering the military, there was a scene where basically they have to get on the bus to get to the camp and everything, their training camp, and they're all sitting together at one point. Like, white women and black women were like sitting together. It wasn't an issue. And as soon as the sergeant got on, he was like, no, y'all gotta separate. All the black people go to the back. Or all the white women go to
this other car.
Yeah, go to this side because you guys can't sit together, kind of thing. And he made a comment towards one of them saying, well, aren't you gonna go with the other women? And she was like, I'm black, so if you're trying to escort all the white women, I'm not white, so I'm not going with them.
Right.
So it just kind of like pinpointed even more like the segregation that was going on in that time. Another part was
what the rules were.
Yeah, and it was like the white women got certain tasks or jobs that the black women didn't. Even when they went into the actual mission itself, aside from the mail sorting, there was a part where she ends up talking to one of the men, and he's kind of describing, yeah, there's a lot going on in the front lines. And she's like, oh my God, you've been on the front lines? And he was like, yeah, to deliver weapons and things like that, but that's about it. He wasn't actually action, like in it or fighting with them.
So that train scene, what happened there, and one of the characters commented on it. They were coming from, I think, Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. At that point, they got on in Pennsylvania. Once they cross the Mason-Dixon line, they are officially in the South. And in the South, black people and white people do not integrate. They don't sit together. Up north, that it was a little more integrated. There was a little more tolerance for the existence of black people, but very strict once you cross that line. So that's what happened in that scene. That's why all of the white women were escorted out. And I love that they made the point with that one soldier, and I wish I wrote her name down, but she refused to pass. She very well could have gone and sat and had the good accommodations and all of that stuff. She stayed with the black women. And I thought that was kind of interesting. The other part that you're talking about, where the black men were also in the area where the black women were. They weren't like in the same bunks or anything like that, but that they were in proximity, because I figured they would keep the men, white and black, completely separate from the women. But
the way I kind of thought about that was, to begin with, they were giving them the lesser accommodations to begin with.
Right.
So they kind of just like put them wherever, and then they had this perfect setup for the whites in the film.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, they're gonna have, you know, their own separation and their own departments and all of that, but white people, they can just figure it out over there. Like,
Yeah.
and it was even kind of, even when I was seeing like the sergeant on the black side, it was very much kind of left up to her on how to structure things. It wasn't, I didn't see any white officers coming around and assisting or treating with her with any type of camaraderie. It was more so just like, that's their bunch, they'll figure it out over there. Like,
you're talking about Kerry Washington's character?
Yes.
She was a major. So bringing up Kerry Washington's name, the movie focused primarily on, I'll say, 3 people. It focused on Kerry Washington, who was playing the role of Charity Adams. It focused on Lena Derricotte King, which was played by Ebony Obsidian. And it focused on Abraham David, which was played by Greg Sulkin. They were really the central characters of the film. Kerry Washington, of course, was the leader of the 688. She called the shots. She made sure that these ladies, their stuff was tight as a drum, because, as she said, heck, as I've said to you, as my parents have said to me, in order to be considered good, you got to be 1,000 times bigger, 1,000 times better than they're mediocre, because they're not going to consider you as good as they are. Anything you do, you got to do it 10 times better. And so that's the mentality that she ran her brigade on. Okay. Lena Derricotte, coming from, I forget what part of Pennsylvania. It wasn't Philadelphia. It was, I think, a little further north. Suburban community. What?
I think she said I thought she said she was from Philadelphia in the film.
But when they opened the film, it was a different town. It wasn't Philadelphia.
Okay.
So that, and I kind of scratched my head when I saw the opening scenes, because she was in an integrated school.
I was like, wait a second.
I was like, what year is this again? Where did this happen? And then I had to remember, she's North.
Because in that opening scene, didn't you think he was going to just like bypass her and talk to the white girl? That's what I thought.
They created that tension, which was great. Which, you know, he was going to bypass and ignore her, but no, he went right to Lena. Abraham David, white, Jewish guy that was in love with Lena. They grew up together.
They kind of were like best friends.
Best friends turned love interest, and, you know, it's still kind of frowned upon. You know, y'all can't be doing all of that. Y'all can't be doing that in public, kind of thing. And her white female classmates made it a point to let her know, we don't think you're as good as us. He's going to end up being with one of us and not you. And Abram kind of encouraged her, hey, this is a war. He spoke to her even then in military terms, because he was on his way to the military. So he was like, all right, they're blocking you. Here's a maneuver we're going to use. And, you know, they did all this and that, and she hopped in the car and they drove away. But he is the other character. You see him briefly in the first part of the movie, and then you kind of see him pop up around Lena, just kind of that mental encouragement she needed while she was going through her stress of being a good soldier. She didn't think Charity Adams liked her at all. Charity Adams went hard on her from day one. And Charity told her, I don't think you're going to make it.
And really, she was just hard on her because she was kind of like the weakest link in training camp. And her whole goal was to show basically like her white superiors that, she had charge and that they were capable, because the whole premise of this story in general is that like Black women especially are not capable of doing the things that they were tasked with in the military.
Right.
But she was trying to change that narrative, and whenever Lena would kind of like slip up, or she was having a hard time, she kind of was like, look, you're making us look crazy. They already don't think we can do anything as it is. I need you to get it together, because I need to impress upon these people that we are capable and that we can do this. So I think that was more so like,
that's the energy that she was coming with. And at a certain point, she saw Lena's tenacity and was like, okay, she didn't let up on her, but she saw that she was willing to go beyond what she thought she could do. So yeah, getting back to their task, they were given this impossible task, because Charity on her end kept saying, hey, we want to be assigned somewhere. We don't want to stay down here in Georgia. Put us out there. Send us to Europe. Her commanding officer was like, you back with this again? Beat it. Quite literally, like, get out of my office. I got things to do. So in the background, a woman showed up at Teddy Roosevelt's house. He was president at the time, spoke to his wife, Eleanor, and said, listen, I don't know what's happening. I wrote to my son 3-4 letters and I haven't gotten any response. And it's not just me. This is happening to a lot of people all over the country. How can we fix it? Eleanor Roosevelt sat down, talked with her husband, talked with the general. And the general was pure old South through and through. He was like, why we want to have these Negroes as a part? We don't need to involve them. In comes Mary Bethune. I always get her name wrong.
McLeod.
Backwards. Mary McLeod Bethune. Okay. She comes in, played by Oprah Winfrey. And she says, you're saying that you don't think the Women's Corps could do it. The White Women's Corps wasn't able to handle the task of the male, but have you tried the Black Women's Corps? And he kind of looked at her and scoffed. And Teddy Roosevelt said, I think that's a smashing idea. Let's do it. Because he supported what his wife thought. And so this is where the shenanigans begin.
I didn't look like Teddy Roosevelt at all. I'm just gonna say that. That was my only
but
like
I
qualm,
love him.
but like
and again, I wish I wrote his name down now that we're talking about him. But he was in Law and Order.
Yeah, he's been in a lot of stuff. I know his face, but I'm just like, you don't look at anything like him. Like,
he does a lot of legal type shows.
Okay.
So I wasn't surprised to see him in this. Sam Waterston. I wasn't surprised to see him in this role. And even though he doesn't look like Teddy Roosevelt, I think he kind of captured.
Because she definitely captured his wife for sure. But
who played his wife?
Oh my gosh, she's been in so much stuff.
Susan Sarandon played Eleanor Roosevelt. And I love what they did. They had her hair just looking crazy.
And it looks like they put like teeth in to like look more like her teeth.
They did a pretty good job making
But I was like, I'm sitting there watching it and I'm like,
I know that face.
Well, no, I'm watching it and I'm like, oh my God, how is she like still able to talk? Because you can tell she has something overlaying on her. Like she has these teeth overlaying on her teeth. So it's like she's having to kind of like talk still and act and do the accents and everything.
This
and
is
she's
why
still...
she gets paid the big money. She can do that. She knows how to do
Yeah,
that.
it was just crazy. But anyway, I'm sorry.
So they sent this women's corps. They gave them half the order. So they had the order to go to Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where the sabotage begins. They said, all right, you can go to Europe. You're going to work on the mail. And that's all the letter said. You got 6 months to get the mail situation straightened out. And they said, yeah, we can do that. Charity Adams didn't ask any additional questions.
She didn't see how much mail was it.
Not like they would have given her an answer.
Yeah.
You know, because they're like, can you do it? And she was like, we can. We absolutely can. All right, you got 6 months. She was like, easy peasy lemon squeezy, we got it. When she was on the plane with all of the other captains and majors and what have you, she noticed they all had 2 envelopes. She only had 1.
So it was a war one, and it was the
war orders, and then like the work order, I guess you said, the assignment.
Yeah.
They only had the assignment. She gets there, and that's when they break the news to her that, yeah, here's the hangar, and it was literally floor to ceiling full of mail bags.
And there was multiple of those buildings.
Seriously, there were like
filled
20
with mail.
buildings.
Yeah.
Filled with mail. They gave them an old school building. The area had recently been bombed, so they put them in the middle of a danger zone. Okay. Gave them a rundown school to sleep and work in. And these ladies had to go in. They had to clean it up, make it livable. Plenty of vermin that had already chewed through the mail. And they had to work on these things. And they came up with a system. They had to work it a little bit, and they showed you the process, how they came to figure out where to send the mail, because for the first month or so, every last letter that they sent out was being returned. Mm-hmm. And they figured out a system to get the mail to the right places. At one point, the general came to do an inspection. Before that, they ordered them to have some recreation. Okay, so they had a dance. While they're having this dance, they send the chaplain in, and he says, the chaplain is like, I was sent here to help you. He walks in the middle of, they're doing the Lindsay hop and flipping each other around and all of that stuff. And he does the sermon and then calls Charity Williams evil for allowing it when she was ordered
to do it,
to create recreation. So Charity, under her own accord, fired him. And this is the thing that I love. They showed, and Kerry Washington, I think, played this role perfectly, because throughout this whole thing, you see her trying to hold it together. She knows her role. She knows her role. She knows what she's up against. She knows that if she doesn't push and declare, I am a major, I have the right to ask, to demand these things, and even get it, even if she knows they're not going to do it because she's a woman and she's black. She stands on that. I'm going to demand this level of respect, knowing that they're going to give her this level of respect.
Yeah.
But she doesn't back down. And there were several scenes where you can see it on her face where she wanted to break down and cry, but she didn't. Because it's like, I'm not going to let you see me be weak. I'm not going to let you see me be vulnerable. Mm-hmm. And she finally broke. Not in front of any of these old white men. She broke when her unit stopped working. They just completely stopped working. They were standing around, and she came down and she yelled, "Get back to work." They didn't budge. She got up on a table to make sure they could see and hear her and said, "Get back to work." And they started applauding. And that's when she realized, oh, A, this was planned, and B, oh my God, I'm getting thanked. And that had not happened. She always had to be strong, which kind of speaks to what even now, Black women have to be that. You hear a lot of women talking about, I'm in my soft era now, and it's because we had to run on Charity Adams energy to make it through work, to make it in our households, taking care of our family, advocating for ourselves in every aspect, only to be told, not you deserve to rest, not that you deserve to be vulnerable, but to be told, I admire you because you're so strong. And all of those times when she was on the verge of tears, I was like, she can't even be soft in this moment.
Yeah, because when he did the inspection and she basically kind of stood up for them and everything, I liked how they really did. I just like how they did this whole movie in general, but I really like how Kerry Washington showed her emotion, because you got a chance to not only see her outward emotion, but you could visually see her inner emotion of like, I want to punch this dude straight in his jaw, but I have to maintain decorum.
I'm not trying to get court-martialed.
Yeah, because I'm not trying to get court-martialed, and I'm trying to also, once again, prove that we are capable. I don't want to give these people what they want, because what they want is for me to act like a plumb fool and just act crazy.
So they can say, typical Negro.
Exactly.
And she wasn't giving them that. Not that it stopped them from saying that anyway, but she wasn't giving them that, and she wasn't going to let anyone in her brigade do that.
Exactly.
Either. So, as far as things that were going on at the time, so I mentioned segregation. Lena went to a integrated high school, in Pennsylvania. So I looked it up. I was like, was that fact? Was that fiction? And in Pennsylvania in 1881, segregation was prohibited in Pennsylvania, but it still continued in many schools. And it wasn't until the 1940s when the NAACP filed a bunch of lawsuits. Those lawsuits helped end segregation in Pennsylvania, Ohio, Southern Illinois, and New Jersey. So that was the beginning of the end of segregation. We know that segregation really didn't start to happen fully until mid to late 60s and into the 70s. Heck, into the 80s, honestly. So that was happening at that time. Lena entered the military when she was 18, which was around 1943. Other things that were happening. So you had, before World War II began, you had the Great Depression, where the stock markets failed, banks failed, people were pulling all of their money out, keeping it in a mattress, and it was hard to get anything. People couldn't get flour and sugar and other stuff. Folks lost their jobs. So it was a hard time. And that was from 1929 to 1941. So this was happening through the middle of the war. The war started in 1939 and ended 1945. So Lena was coming into the military towards the tail end. Her and Abram came in towards the tail end of the war. The other thing that happened during that time, 1941, December 1941, the attack on Pearl Harbor. These two events, the war and the attack on Pearl Harbor, shifted the economy of the United States. This is how they came out of the Great Depression, because American stateside had to produce goods that they would need in war. And so that's the thing, which I learned about it in school. I didn't process it. I was trying to get a grade. I wasn't trying to learn it. You know what I mean? But it's kind of interesting how all of that played into it and played together. Lena Delicott, at the end of the movie, they had her read a part of her story about what happened, how things ended. And at the time that she read that, she was 100 years old. And there's something that Abrams said to her before he went to war. I'll let you take that one.
Yeah, so there's a part where when she was still in the military, they had to go bury two other soldiers from their battalion. They had to go bury them. And Kerry Washington's character was like, hey, if your person that, you know, was in the military that passed away, if he was here, he's probably out in this field as well. So if you look for his name, you may be able to find him. We're going to go and we'll leave somebody behind to bring you back to the base or whatever. So she went and she looked for his name. She had his letter on her because at that point she found the letter. She got it.
Yeah, someone in the unit found his letter amongst
all that mail. Yeah. And she went to his site and, you know, she obviously is emotional and she's reading his letter at the same time. And in the last part of his letter, he says, you know, I know you're going to wait for me, but if I don't make it out of this, I want you to move on. I want you to live your life. And I want you to live a life for the both of us. So when he said that, I was like, wow, she really made on her promise. And not only moving on, which the love interest that she meets while she's actually in the military, she lets everybody know, and I married him, and what? She also said, like, she's living proof of, she lived life for both her and Abram. So she followed through with her end of the bargain for him.
And we're speaking in the number of years.
Yeah, and, you know, for me, I didn't, watching it, of course, as a Black woman, I went through a bunch of different emotions, anger, frustration, happiness, all of that. But it wasn't until the end where I actually got like emotional, where it brought me to tears, seeing these women in real life, like hearing her read her portion, seeing them in that time marching and everything like that, seeing the actual sergeant that was over them and everything, and she's giving them their orders and everything. It was just kind of like, wow, this really happened. Because coming from the perspective of, I'm 28 years old, and I'm not going to say that we didn't learn anything about Black history at all, but we didn't learn this. Yeah. I pray that now that we are getting these types of films, because I'm not going to lie, social studies was like a huge, all right, class, dragging the TV in. We're going to give you a sheet of paper with a bunch of questions on it. You watch this film while I go grade papers and answer these questions correctly as you watch the film. Yeah. So since our kids are going to be doing probably something similar and have their own MacBook or something in front of them doing it.
Mm-hmm.
I pray that these types of films are going into schools, because this is like the important stuff that it's like we did not learn about in school. Not in depth like this. Like, I just don't feel like...
The thing is, they're not going to teach it. They're not.
They probably aren't.
Think about the political climate that we're in right now.
Well, teach your kids.
They want to erase. They want to erase this as much as possible. So, like you just said,
teach your children.
You got to teach the nugget this stuff.
Yeah, and I will be, because it's important. And even like when I watch some stuff, I'm like, Josie, come here, look at this or whatever. Mm-hmm. You know, because it's like important for us as Black people to just have this information, to know our history. Because
like the guy was saying in the movie, he's insulting them, and he was like, you're idiots, you can't read, you're stupid, you don't know what you're doing. They will still promote that about us now. Perfect example of a you can't do that's put to Black people is, oh, look at Black on Black crime. And the thing is...
And Black jobs. What's a Black job?
Okay. But when it comes down to Black on Black crime, it's like, well, people commit crimes where they live. So let's talk about white on white crime. Let's talk about all the bombings and the school shootings and all of that stuff. They won't focus on that. They're going to continue the narrative that existed in this time and before. And so we have to be able to combat that notion with information. And again, films like this, every time we do a historical film, I say it, sit down and watch it with your kids. Have the conversation about it. This wasn't that long ago. No, this wasn't that long ago. Her grandfather, her paternal grandfather, fought in World War II. That's how close this is. Okay, I have a friend, when the movie came out, her and her cousin posted about their great-grandmother, who was part of this very battalion. One of the members of our group, she posted about, I think it was her grandmother as well, who was part of this battalion. And she listed the members of Delaware who were in that battalion. She I think she listed 5 or 6 names that were part of that battalion. So this isn't anything that's so far away from us. You know, if you're in the United States, you might have a grandparent, great grandparent, aunt, uncle, somebody who was in this war in some part. And it's just like with the Civil War. They will swear to you that Black people didn't fight in that war at all.
No, there's a lot.
Black people fight in that war. A lot of Black people were voluntold in the South that they had to fight for their oppression. They don't teach it that way in history class. So make sure you are looking up this information. And again, like I said, I learned this stuff in high school, talking about the details of World War II, World War I, too, and it was to pass a test. I didn't process the broader information.
It's getting watered down the further we go down the line, is all I'm saying. Like, it's just getting watered down. So I just feel like, because when I tell my daughter about certain things in Black history, it's nothing in... Because honestly, I gotta be honest, I'm still learning so much about Black history as a 28-year-old person. So when I share certain things that I do know with her, it's like, wow, they really did that? Or we really had to deal with this, that. They ask questions, and they're curious, and they want to know, you know? So it's important to just, like, sit down and watch movies like this with your kids, and... You know, even do more research if you can.
Yeah, it doesn't even have to be a preachy thing. It's a, hey, have you ever heard of this person? Oh, let me tell you what they did.
And I'm telling you, kids are like sponges. Like, they literally want to know this stuff. Like, when you start with them, you don't have to, again, it's not a preachy thing. It's just, you introduce them to them. If it's something that it strikes a curiosity in them, they're going to want to know more.
Right.
So I think it's
so
important.
Don't hide away. I promise you, we didn't tell all the details of the movie. We told a lot, but we didn't tell everything. Oh, one thing you were talking about when they marched in. So what I noticed, and I love that they did it like this. Oh, I'm so sorry. They showed the black and white reel of those soldiers marching in to Europe. They got right off the boat. They had marching orders. They marched. Okay? And the white folks were standing on the sideline. Again, this area had just been bombed. And they're standing on the sideline watching a group of uniformed women walk down their road to the school that they are going to be living and working in. And I noticed that, and I think this is just great filming, great detail. They filmed that exactly. They recreated that reel in the film. So when all of these actors are gathered together and redoing this scene, there's a part where there's a little boy who's running in the background. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's kind of authentic. I could see a kid doing that. But then you see the kid in the black and white reel. Even the camera angles, they did it. They included some of those camera angles in the reenacted scene. So this was fantastically filmed, fantastically performed,
very detailed, which I appreciate, because
very emotional.
Out of all the military, which again, it's probably not a lot, but out of all the military films that I saw, I actually got a better understanding of like what these people are dealing with day in and day out, because of how descriptive and visually descriptive, and even just when they're having conversations, how descriptive they are with what everything is and in what order it has to happen and all of that. Like, they did an excellent job with that.
Yeah. So if you haven't seen it, I think most people in here in this group probably have, but if you haven't seen it, it's on Netflix. Sit down, have some tissues nearby, because there are several points where I know I got real teary-eyed, and I don't be crying like that, even if I'm sitting there watching a movie by myself, you know. Tough. But definitely sit down and watch this, and don't be afraid to go down the rabbit hole. And if you think something ain't jiving in the movie historically, go look it up. Go look it up. So anyway, thanks for joining us once again. We love you for it. We really do appreciate you showing up, and when you comment, and when we see you hit like, keep it coming. Keep it coming. We love it. Next week we're gonna stick with the Black History theme here. We're gonna be watching Miss Evers' Boys, and that is on Max.
Yes.
Okay, that's on Max. So we'll be doing that next week. I announced last week that we are on 2 new platforms. We are now on Fanbase and Spill, in addition to our page on YouTube. If you stick around to the end, you'll see how to find me on Fanbase. It's Nikay Writes, Nikewrites, on both Spill and Fanbase. And if you follow us on YouTube and on Facebook, you're going to Movies That Move. Movies That Move We is the name of the page on YouTube, and also our page on Facebook. There's about 2 years worth of movies that we've discussed on the YouTube page. So definitely go check it out. Join us on Facebook. Like, share, follow, subscribe. Talk to your friends. Invite them to the next one. We love to see it. And until next week.
Bye.